Who are those occupying your office? Is it the SSS, the police, or NIMASA, or the agency, or the outfit run by Tom Polo?
I was going to come to that. A long time ago, when the NIMASA was formed, it used to be NMA, and then it was NIMASA, and then it became NIMASA. Basically, by whatever name called, the job of NIMASA is the job of the government inspector of shipping, and then that splits into two. Inspector of shipping, inspector of foreign ships, that's port state control, and inspector of local ships, that is a flag state administration. Over the years, NIMASA's business focus continued to shift. Rather than concentrate on those issues that it really was established to look at, it became a revenue generating agency. And from becoming a revenue generating agency, it is gradually shifting now that it's developing an armed unit within the organization. And those of us who have been in the maritime for a long time have really opposed this. It does not need to have an armed unit to enforce any laws. Because if you are there and you have to give clearance to ships to come in and to go out, if people don't pay you and they don't do anything, you withhold those things. So now we have a situation where they've developed an armed unit, and that is causing problems. Because those who are in control of that armed unit are not constitutionally empowered to command federal forces. Neither do they have the necessary expertise to do so. So these are some of the things that we have been pointing out over time, changes that are required in terms of the focus of the organization. But unfortunately, people seem to take a shine to any particular thing that they want to do, draw up a bill, go to the National Assembly, have it passed, and before you know it, what was supposed to be a regulator of technical standards of ships now becomes one organization that has an armed unit that now goes outside the maritime and goes into tank farms. Because when you look at it, the regulation of tank farms is the duty exclusively of the Department of Petroleum Resources rather than that of NIMASA. So when you then now have them traipsing around the whole place looking for where drops of oil are going, you wonder what this has to do with capacity development in the shipping industry.
How does NIMASA generate revenue?
How does it generate revenue?
Yeah, because you said
it draws a tax.
It
draws a tax on every good that's imported into country. 3% of the freight is paid to it, and now they've included 2% of the freight for local goods that are carried within the cabotage. It really makes a lot of money. In the beginning, that wasn't the case at all. The focus wasn't on money making. The focus was on providing services to ensure safer seas and a cleaner environment. But now the focus has absolutely shifted completely, and now they are revenue accruers. Now they are enforcers of standards in tank farms. Really, I think there has to be a proper look at what that organization ought to be doing, so that it can be refocused back onto what it really should be doing.
You mentioned safer seas. I mean, considering the spate of piracy nowadays, you would think that NIMASA truly should develop some capacity to bear arms and to be able to ensure that truly the seas are much safer for...
What is the Nigerian Navy there for? Nigerian Navy is a standing force that has been there for so many years. All you have to do is to give Nigerian Navy adequate equipment, proper motivation, and they will do that job. You can't have a situation where the Nigerian Navy is sitting there idly doing nothing, and then you start developing an independent force within a civilian organization, commanded by civilians who have no prior experience or constitutional authority to command federal forces.
You were in the Navy, good enough. Is it that the Navy has become so ineffective in safeguarding our waterways?
No, I wasn't actually in the Navy. I was in the Merchant Navy. I worked with the Nigerian National Shipping Lines.
Okay.
The Navy are there and they have the capacity to do these things. They just have got to be given the mandate and the material to do it. And what we have specifically suggested in the past was that they develop a number of operational platforms, forward platforms, and then have smaller vessels that operate from those smaller platforms. And they would absolutely cover the full extent of our 700 and something kilometers of a coastline.
But
it's very easy.
They still do that, isn't it?
Well, I don't know to the extent that they do it, but you can see now that that job has been appropriated by the armed unit in NIMASA, and the Navy are just there watching and hoping that the right thing will be done.
You know, as it stands presently, your tank farm has been locked. I was just thinking, there's this think there's this is it logic now that usually they send out warnings that people should know. Usually this has to do with more civilian cases, in the sense that you're usually referring to landlords when they're saying know your tenants, know your customers, know those who patronize you. They could be criminals, they could be anything.
Yes.
You make sure you know them, because if in event someone is found in your property and the person is proven to be a criminal, you could also end up losing your property. Do you think that that logic could apply to you if the contents of empty grace vessel, which they say offloaded into your tank farm, is proven to be stolen? Would you subscribe to the logic that you could actually lose your tank farm?
No, not at all. I mean, that doesn't really hold water at all. If, for instance, the contents of empty grace was coming to my tank farm and I was the consignee, I'm not the consignee. There is a consignee. The empty grace is only renting space in my tank farm, and the cargo is throughputing because it's not sitting in the tank farm. It doesn't end there and I become the owner. It's exactly the same thing that happens when the empty grace rents space through NPS channels to take the cargo. Are you going to interdict the managing director of the Ports Authority for allowing the empty grace, assuming for a moment that the cargo was stolen? Are you going to interdict the captain of the vessel? Because all he needs to do is to carry oil from one place to the other. He's not really going to go back and trace it to the origin from when it was crude oil, how it was refined, and eventually brought to his ship. He cannot do that. So what we have is a throughput arrangement. You bring the cargo, it's not stopping in our tank farm. It is going to be there whilst you bring your trucks and take it. So I don't see how that could be the case.
So you would not subscribe to that logic here?
No, it can. Just imagine for a moment that there are lots of thieves in Lagos and they drive around in Danfo buses. Does that make the owners of the Danfos thieves themselves? If thieves ride in Danfo buses and they go from one point to the other.
It might not make the owners thieves, but they actually stand the chance of losing their Danfo buses. They could be confiscated.
By what? What is the logic that such a confiscation could happen? So the man goes in there, he rents a space to take him from here to Ojuelegba, and in Ojuelegba he gets off. Will the police arrest him to say a thief traveled through your bus? The concept that we're talking about here is a throughput. It's not cargo that is consigned to us. We are not the consignee. The consignee is still the same person that shipped it, and he only rented space there for a short time, just like he rented channel space for the vessel to come through, and he rented a tank space to put the cargo into the hold of the ship, and he rented the time of the DPR who issued him the instructions to go and discharge.